The concept of cover art has always fascinated me because you have to represent what your series is in a single image, and that's easier said than done. Since I made a video on manga covers, it's pretty clear how much I love them. But instead of boring you with more of that, I wanted to talk about the media closely associated to it, anime. But unlike manga covers, where most are pretty great, anime cover art is all over the place when it comes to its quality, which is why I wanted to focus on that today. I'm gonna be talking about really good ones, bad ones, and everything in between. And to be more precise, the American covers, since those are the ones I have access to. If I use any from a different region, that means it's the same one used over here. I'm gonna be going through a lot of them, so strap in, and let's begin. Cover art over here, and in general outside of Japan, is really interesting because unlike other mediums where they are made from scratch right before the project is finished, a lot of Japanese art is reused, and that can be 50-50 with the final product. What I mean by this is that there is promotional art made leading up to the anime premiere, and then there is new art made for the home video release, and either of these can be used. A lot of anime don't have that luxury of tons of art to use, which is why promo art is defaulted to more often, but those can vary in quality. If we look at Kabaneri of the Iron Fortress, for example, while it isn't outright bad, I do have problems with it. In this case, I just feel like there's way too much going on in it. The center is super crowded, you have the Kabane in the background, and it's really hard to make out what exactly is behind the characters. The text doesn't help, and for some reason it's in the sky. It feels like they needed to fit the Iron Fortress part of the title into the piece. It's kind of all over the place. I would have preferred if they used the other one instead, since it's way easier to read. In the anime, Kabaneri are half human, half Kabane, and there's only two of them aboard the train. The art is exactly the title. Those are the Kabaneri, and that's the Iron Fortress. And simple, to the point, and doesn't try to tell you everything about the anime like the first one. If anything, it makes you curious since you're now wondering what's a Kabaneri and why do they have an Iron Fortress. If you have a good eye, you'll notice the track rails giving away that it's a moving train, giving you more questions. It's a nice little hidden detail. Sentai does this a lot, sometimes slightly editing them so they're not exactly the same. Again, they're not bad, and if anything I can respect them for using art that gets the job done, but it just means if there is pretty average promo art, we're gonna be getting an average cover. It makes me sad that Food Wars falls into this, but it's one of the rare cases where the Japan art isn't really much better, which is really ironic since the manga it's based on has incredible imagery. It's why the Kawaii Complex cover doesn't do anything for me. It represents the show really well, showing the cast, who the focus is, and even the setting, but it looks really forgettable. But if we look at the Australian cover, it's a whole other story. A brand new piece of amazing art that calls back to the manga it's based on. The title of the show is pretty clever, being a double entendre because the setting is literally the Kawaii Complex, but the main character is very into Ritsu Kawaii. He has a Kawaii Complex. Do you see where I'm going with this? This cover shows the main focus perfectly. It's really nice and represents the beauty of the anime and narrative really well. I never get tired of looking at this one, or any of the Japanese covers in general, and for some reason Sentai use none of them. Do you see what I mean when I say that cover art can be 50-50, especially when it comes to promo ones? But using it isn't automatically a bad thing. Sometimes the promo art is so good that it makes complete sense to use it. The Aka cover comes to mind for this one because it's freaking amazing. The show is about a coup that is gonna happen within the government and the main character has to stop it. The art shows that perfectly, having all the players in the game in the symbol of the Aka organization with the lead in front, looking like he's questioning every single one of them. Simple and effective that it makes me want to watch the show every time I look at it. Blood Blockade Battlefront is another good one in my books. I know praising this looks weird since it's doing something similar to Kabaneri, but unlike that one where it's pulling your attention all over the place, the crouch out here is the centerpiece. It overall feels much better since it takes most of the cover and the image is evenly distributed across it, and it really nails the chaotic tone of the anime. Season 2's cover complements it really well. While it's very much different, it feels similar because of how it keeps the organized chaos Season 1 had, and I like how the rest of Libra is more prominent since they play a bigger role here. The Pet Girl of Sakuraso is another one where I like the promo art, but what makes this different is that this was for the compilation release. The original run used light novel art and has this nice watercolor effect in the background that I'm way more into. Sentai recently announced it's getting a dub and with that a new release, and I like how it uses elements from both versions, having a brushstroke effect in the back with an image of Mashiro from the anime. And similar to Kabaneri, it's exactly the title, The Pet Girl of Sakuraso. Who is that? Oh, it must be her. Engage to the Unidentified used the Blu-ray art for its cover, keeping all the elements from it and just filling it up more, but this is one of the few times I actually prefer the promo art, since it shows the dynamic of the characters much better. It tells you just as much information as the original Blu-ray, so they could have used it. The Sekikun Blu-ray is really cool since it reuses a lot of art to make something new that perfectly describes the show as well as calling back to its manga. What makes me love this one a lot is how all the antics are within a disc. It's super clever. I've had this since 2016 and I just now noticed. It's awesome and has a ton of personality. Which is why I don't get why they switched to the promo art for the new version. The show came out with a dub, so there is no reason to re-release it. It really is the same exact product, just with weaker art. Gatchaman Crowds is one of the other rare cases where they didn't use promo art, and I'm really glad about that. I've always been a fan of hyper-stylized aesthetics because it usually gives a lot of leeway when it comes to the art that can be used. Crowd's cover has this great sketch style with each character colored differently except Hajime's since she's the newest Gatchaman, all being within the scarf of who chooses them. It has a ton of energy and gets across the colorful look of the show, unlike the promo art. But this brings up a question. If you look at season 2, it's completely different, so where did they get this art? They had to get it from somewhere. Well, it's from the limited edition Japanese Blu-ray, which is why it looks amazing. So that got me thinking, if season 1 had a limited edition, that means Insight must have had one as well, and it did, and it looked freaking awesome. I actually really like the cover for Insight since it does a much better job in presenting the atmosphere of the anime compared to season 1, but I seriously feel cheated that we didn't get this one. I love the flat minimal art style on the yellow. It would have complemented the first cover really well. I really don't understand how someone looked at this and decided not to use it, like how? The ReZero Blu-rays are some of my least favorite covers in a very long time. Funimation decided to do their own thing and we got really bland headshots for it. And for some reason they decided to put Subaru and Amelia on the second one even when they could have put more supporting characters on it. If we take a look at the Japanese ones, they have these nice pieces of original light novel art that look great, but that's not really what bugs me. If we take a closer look at the contents of them, you'll notice something really familiar. This is where they got all the headshots, meaning they had access to all of this art, and for some reason they decided to use the simple boring ones meant for the case rather than the much better actual cover art. You know, the one people are meant to see? Also, you really didn't have to use Subaru and Amelia again, since you had way more headshots to go through. I don't understand how this was decided on since it takes way more effort to make these. You would think they would just reuse the light novel art since they're done and look great. Not even the limited edition is good, and guys, why did you use the same rhyme art? You guys put alternate ones for Subaru and Amelia, but you just used the same one from the first cover? She has a matching headshot from the same set you got the Subaru art, so I don't get it. Before anyone mentions it, I know the matching ram is in the back, but it's still really lazy. There's nothing saving this one, guys. Looking into these, I discovered the UK had its own limited edition that used all the light novel art, and you guessed it, it looks freaking amazing. It even uses it for all the discs, and I really like how they reincorporated the pattern from the booklet for the cover, which really complements the already solid art. This is what we're missing out on, just saying. It could be worse, sometimes multi-part series don't match. We're gonna be looking at the Chihayafuru limited edition for this one. It has this nice beautiful piece of manga style art, and then it's gone for the second one. Even though I like it a lot more, I would have preferred they just use promo art of that season like they did for the second one so they match. They did it for the standard edition, so I guess it works out. Honey and Clover is another one, but I can at least commend these for fixing it in the second one with the great art that calls back to the manga. But it's kinda too late since none of them match now. But seriously, good job on the second one, I really like it. Sometimes covers can match a little too well. While I like the Is This a Zombie covers, I never understood why Haruno's on both of them. They could have put another character on it, especially Ayumu since the title would work better with him, but these are for the Blu-rays. The original DVD versions I like more because of the solid minimalism. Having this messy texture with the pink splatter effect and chainsaw-filled stamp. If you know the show, this really conveys the essence of what it is. They actually redid it as a placeholder for the new compilation release, and I wish they would have kept it since it looks way better than what we got. The art is fine, but they put the logo twice on the cover and on the spine. It's very unnecessary. I don't get why they didn't just go with this since it's cleaner and tell you both seasons are on it 3 times. In the stamp, the logo, and below the chainsaw. Not as in your face as the final version. The Rail Deck series is an interesting case study when it comes to US box art. Index Season 1 initially released DVD only and is just a bunch of characters in random spots on a colored background. Both look and feel really lazy, like there was no time spent on them. Which is why when it came to the Blu-ray release, they changed it to the Japanese Blu-ray art that is much nicer and simpler. And this would be a trend not only for Index, but for the sister series Railgun as a nice way to unify them aesthetically, but also being a callback to the light novel they're based on. Every Blu-ray would have light novel art that looks amazing. And then you get to Season 3. It's Honey and Clover all over again, but worse. Funimation decided to use the promo art for the first half. You know, just casually breaking the theming they set up, no big deal, and then bring it back in the next part which makes no sense, and now the look is broken because one doesn't match. And I get why they did it. If you look at the first Blu-ray of that season, it's pretty tame and doesn't really get you excited, which is why they use this one. But this cover is actually a clever callback to the first one, showing the growth of the relationships and the world to that point. It's freaking awesome. The empty road Toma and Index were standing in is now filled with people from both sides of the world. It's what the series has been building up to since the beginning, and the cover reflects that. And not just Index, but Railgun as well. There are characters on here that only appear in Railgun. This cover is meant for fans, and as one, I love it a lot, which is why this cover frustrates me so much. I get that this art looks really good and way more epic, I get that, but that's not really the point. This art has a lot more meaning to the franchise and the people who love it, and they just threw it away. Also, going back to Railgun for a brief bit, if you look at the Japanese Blu-ray art, it actually took the opposite approach to Index, having anime art instead. There is a big difference between art with intention and without it, and if you were to compare any of them to the Index DVDs, you can see what I mean. But that's not where I'm going with this. If you look at all of them and then look at the Funimation Blu-ray, they are completely different, which means they went out of their way to find light novel art of Railgun to match Index, which makes the Season 3 Blu-ray even more infuriating. They threw away the look the main series started in the main series, and the fact that they bring it back in the same season means they were completely aware of it. I don't understand how they decided on this. I can only hope that when they eventually release Season 3 in a compilation like they did with the others, they decide to use this piece of art. Even though I've been kind of all over the place with promo art, sometimes slightly changing them can make a big difference. If we look at the original Blu-rays of Steins Gate, it has beautiful art that is a direct callback to the original visual novel's art style. It's really nice with the textures and faded colors, but I actually prefer the compilation release for this one, since it's art of the anime made to look like the visual novel. It's just a lot more striking, and the way colors are used really complement the characters. It feels more mysterious and ominous compared to the original version, which is just really boring. It's one of my favorites because it's still being its own thing, separate to the source material, but calls back to it subtly. All of them are great, so it doesn't feel like a downgrade compared to the others we've talked about, they're just different. For the Hyoka Blu-rays, they added this nice soft floral pattern and frame that complements the image, making them feel like a framed piece of art, overall giving it an elegant feel. It feels like a brief snapshot in the day-to-day life of these characters because of how simple the art is, which is pretty accurate of Hyoka, and the floral pattern accentuates the beauty of the show itself. It's a nice little touch. The Zombieland Saga Limited Edition adds this nice colorful splatter effect that combines both the horror and idle elements of the anime in a nice simple way. It's small but does make a difference while also filling up all the leftover space, focusing on the girls even more. Let's switch to something else for a brief bit. The Bleach Blu-rays have some of the worst art I've ever seen. While I get that it's a callback to the manga covers, the difference is that those have amazing sketched and colored character profiles with interesting poses to fill up the cover. These don't, and just feel awkward because of how flat and empty they are. These were obviously made in-house, and it makes sense when you learn that they used all the amazing DVD art. Those are fantastic and really do feel like the anime homaging the manga. All the releases started off being 3 episodes and would later switch to 12, so it makes sense why they ran out of art to use. It's kinda cool seeing the original run experiment with the aesthetic over time. And then you get to the season box sets, which are okay, still feeling strong, just being anime art, and then we get the Blu-rays. Put any cover with the same characters side by side and the difference is insane. And can we please stop doing the character on an empty background with a logo? I mean this in general, not just for anime. I'm still not over Spider-Man PS4. It just doesn't look good, especially if it's a gray background, the least fun color. Twin Star Exorcist did the same thing and they look boring. They're actually worse than the Bleach ones because while those are the same quality, those needed to be made since they had no more art to use. These are from the Japanese release, but what annoys me is that there was an alternate cover that looked way better for all of these. But it's not just that. What makes these worse for me, aside from the boring art and the much better alternative they didn't use, is that they excluded the only other main character. The show is called Twin Star Exorcist, it's about these two and you only have one of them. You put supporting characters before her, how does that work? She has a cover, so why? While making this, I just automatically assumed she had one, so I kept looking for the 5th volume until I realized there were only 4. I totally understand that there are some anime that are much longer than the usual, so they're going to have way more releases and they just need a way to unify them aesthetically. But seriously, can we stop using an empty gray void? They never look good. Kill la Kill is the only exception. The art is really strong and it fills up the cover, so they're a joy to look at, but again, it's the only exception. I don't get why they do this, since just filling up the background changes the feeling completely. If we look at the new Inuyasha Blu-rays, which are finally coming up by the way, they have these nice traditional style floral patterns that are a direct reference to the Edo inspired setting the show takes place in. They really are the same concept as the others, having characters and a logo, but look and feel way better. And something cool I noticed is that this design was made so that it could match the original Final Act Blu-ray that came out 5 years ago, which is really appreciated. So the entire series will look nice when completed in that format. You don't even have to do something that complex. Black Clover has nice close-ups of the characters, and the background is made to look like a grimoire, even having a subtle leather texture. Super simple and effective. The art is solid too. Even Nisekoi got this down, having one girl per cover with the flat background filled with fun shapes and patterns. These are some of my favorites because of how cute and colorful they are. I'm glad the compilation release keeps that in its own way, having this nice flat pastel color scheme with everyone on it. It's really good. There's probably a good chunk of you that don't care since everything is digital, and I get that. But I still love collecting physical media and looking at them because, like manga covers, they are art. Not as consistent, but still art. I'm obviously super passionate about this stuff, and I can be here all day talking about more, but I'll end it off here. Trust me, there's so many more I wanted to talk about, and that's not even bringing up special editions. Tell me what some of your favorite or least favorite covers are, I'd love to hear about them. And if you don't collect Blu-rays and DVDs, this applies to promo art too. Also, if you like this kind of stuff, follow the Twitter @WTK. They post about anime releases, but what makes them cool is they're not exclusive to American ones. So you'll see amazing versions from different regions, like this cool Korean collector's edition of Sound Euphonium or the Japanese Eizouken box set. They're awesome. It's where I got a lot of my images, so give them a follow. If you guys hit the end of the video, I always appreciate that, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye guys, thanks for watching.